KT, don't you dare spend this entire video talking about Sindri. There is more to this game than that dwarf. But he's the most adorable dwarf we've ever seen! Just look at him! So cute, so cunning, so cheeky, so, other positive descriptors that start with a C. I love him with every fiber of my being. He can do no wrong! If you had told me, my word, 18 years ago, the first God of War game came out in 2005? Good grief, these videos are making me feel older each day. If you had told me back in 2005 I would have become a fan of the God of War series, I would have called you crazy. Let's just say I was not the target audience of this series back at its inception. The ads were very much directed towards the lads, and I was not one of the lads. And honestly, I wanted to play Pokemon and Final Fantasy. To young me, God of War was just a mindless, testosterone-filled story about an angry guy killing gods. Yes, I know there's more to it. I know Kratos' history and so forth, but still, I really had no interest in them until recently. And yes, it's mostly because of the dwarf. If you don't like that fact, then well, I don't know. I'm sorry? Okay, let me give you a brief rundown of the series, just to sort of catch people up. And by brief, I mean very brief. Like I said, I haven't played the original game, so I'm honestly having to go off what little research I did. Again, I'm sorry. Also, I might play the originals at some point, who knows? Okay, just to be clear, the God of War series is big, like ridiculously big. There are only like 5 mainline games, but then there's a whole bunch of spin-offs. When Santa Monica Studios created Kratos and God of War, I don't think they could really guess the monolith of a series it would become. Kratos is considered, if not genuinely, the mascot of Sony. He was a massive contrast to the cuter, more playful tones of Nintendo's characters, mainly Mario, and wasn't the monotonous protagonist of Master Chief from Halo. When it came to Sony really showing they wanted to go hard with gaming, they picked the right guy for it. The series is broken up into 2 eras, the Greek era, which is games 1 through 3 and their spin-offs, then the Norse era, which is 2018 and Ragnarok, though this might include later iterations due to how young this aspect of the story is. The series was created by David Jaffe, but the most recent games have been mainly headed by Cory Barlog, the games that he mainly directed being that of God of War 2 in the 2018 edition. The main theme of the classic series is that Kratos, our Spartan warrior, was essentially tricked into killing his own family, thus causing him to want to seek revenge against the Greek pantheon, mainly Ares, the god of war, and Zeus, who is his real father. Kratos is also forever cursed to carry the ashes of his dead family on his body, hence his pale complexion. The Norse era is Kratos finding himself in the land of Midgard trying to bury his past and settle down and live a quiet life. But obviously that ain't gonna happen, also boy. I mean, yeah, this is very brief. I don't really know what else to add, to be honest. If you're a big God of War fan, I guess I apologize in advance again. I just haven't played them, and this video isn't about the series as a whole, just its 2018 installment. And though this may not be entirely accurate, I do honestly see this game as sort of a soft reboot as well as a sequel. All I'm trying to say is that you can play this game without having played the previous one. Hey, and if you are a big fan, I finally played the series, and I absolutely love it. God of War 2018 was my game of 2022. God, I feel like such a broken record. Let's move on to the characters. Because this game is so story-heavy, I'll just give brief descriptions on them, then we'll move on, because a lot of what this game seems to really focus around is the mystery and discovery of each one of them. The Kratos of this era is very much older and more worn, his body riddled with the scars of his past. He's adorned with a large beard and tired eyes, and also speaks in a softer tone with wiser words. This all coming through so wonderfully by his new actor, Christopher Judge. Y'all thought I was gonna forget about Chris. Oh no, I ain't going for one more second without talking about the actors who played these characters. Not the voice actors, actors. Stop calling them voice actors. My word, if they mocap or do anything on a soundstage, they're actors. Also, as a Stargate fan, I always knew he was great. I'm gonna gush over Chris for a second. Can we all just please love this man? His performance, his love of the character, his overall himness. Protect him at all costs. I love this man as Kratos. I get it, people loved Terrence Carson. He was great for our younger, angrier warrior, but Christopher Judge fits this wiser Kratos so much more. Okay, let's get back to Kratos. Kratos is our titular god of war, though in this quiet era of his life, as he's made his new home in Midgard, he finds himself a calmer, more passive man. Having settled down with a woman named Faye, he has also come back into parenthood with the birth of his son, Atreus. Not much is known about Kratos' time in Midgard before the beginning of the game, but we know he has a rather short and rocky relationship with his son, opting to call him Boy instead of Atreus. The game spends the vast majority of its time really exploring the different levels of growth and change Kratos must endure if he is to become a better person and a proper role model to his son. Atreus is the kind, empathetic son of Kratos and Faye. Despite being the exact opposite of his large and formidable father, Atreus is more than capable of protecting himself in combat through his skills with a bow. Atreus is played by the young Sonny Suljic. Being fairly close in age to Atreus himself, the naivete and youth of the actor shines through with our young protagonist. Due to the passing of his mother, Atreus now finds himself at odds with his father's apprehension and confrontational nature. From how it is presented, young Atreus was very much sheltered throughout his youth, only being able to explore the woods around his home, and obviously not without the guidance of his mother and father. The story of this game is much about Atreus as it is Kratos, so it's difficult to talk about his growth and take on the worlds around him without getting into the story, so let's just move on to our other notable characters, the Huldra brothers. Like, I don't even know if using my normal script writing style is even good when describing Brok. I feel like if I'm not swearing every sentence, it isn't good enough, but I don't swear in these videos, so Brok will have to do it for me.
Brok! What? I'm on a fucking break!
Brok is Brok. Like, I love Sindri, I love Kratos, I love Atreus, but Brok is Brok. We all love Brok. Brok is the foul-mouthed, tenacious side of the Huldra brothers, played by actor Robert Craighead. He is the first of the two Kratos and Atreus meet on their journey, Brok recognizing the axe and insists that only he and his brother are allowed to work on it. Though Kratos doesn't believe him, Brok immediately shows them by noting the brand on its grip and giving the axe its new upgrades. He has colorful dialogue for just about anything and often regards things in a way that are less than ideal. Many characters often point this out, mainly Mimir and his brother Sindri. Due to a falling out with said brother, when talking to him, Brok will always regard Sindri's work as shoddy and comment on his stuck-up attitude. Though despite this, Brok is fairly kind-hearted. He's willing to help Kratos and Atreus on their journey, and as the story goes, he will even ask about his brother, wondering if he's eating enough or if he's doing well. It's obvious from what we see with Brok that he still has some care in his heart for Sindri. Oh, Sindri, oh my sweet precious angel, I love him so much. His cuteness makes me want to cry. It's been too long, and I mean too long since I've had a character like Sindri. This cute, coy, unassuming dwarf threw me completely off guard. I am mainly talking about him from Ragnarok. I adore 2018 Sindri, but oh man, did the sequel ramp him up to 11. Okay, I'll do everything in my power just to talk about his first game iteration. Sindri, played by Adam Harrington, is the other half of the Huldra brothers. Unlike Brok, Sindri presents himself in a more intelligent manner, speaking elegantly and referring to Atreus and Kratos with more dignified titles. Sindri sees himself as a more accomplished brother, showing his clear disdain for what Brok has done to the Leviathan upon first meeting Kratos and Atreus. He also shows a heartfelt respect for Faye, Atreus' mother, giving his condolences at the mention of her death. Sindri also has a very unique characteristic. He has a massive dislike for anything filthy and being touched, these obviously generally going hand in hand. He refuses to get even near Atreus and Kratos due to them mostly being unclean, and will often gag at the idea of anything remotely unhygienic or the sight of blood. Sindri, like his brother, will also help the duo along the way, upgrading their equipment, but unlike Brok, who eventually sets a shot in Tyr's temple, Sindri is more so peppered around the realms, mostly working on old technology strewn about and getting himself into danger. He states to Kratos and Atreus that he is constantly seeking progress and change so as to improve his skills, this being one of the main reasons he and Brok split up as a working duo. Learning about the two brothers takes a little more effort due to them being by the wayside of our main duo, but it's definitely worth it. Sindri and Brok have some of the best dialogue and insight into the realms that can be visited, as well as the whole underlying lore of the Norse era. Though this is often overlooked in favor of another character, who I realized I can't quite talk about yet, and I realized I can't really talk about other characters without mentioning major story beats. So yeah, let's get on to the gameplay. I'm going to talk about the gameplay before I get into the story because I think it'll just be easier. So I must be 100% transparent. The first time I played this game, I was ill. Like, super ill. I have the worldwide ick, so I don't think I ever even got good at the combat, like, at all. But I'm still going to talk about it because despite me being terrible at it, it was insanely fun. Oh, and I played on story mode. Yes, boo me, sweet people, boo me, for I am bad at games, but I love playing them anyway. I understand not all games need an easy mode. Some games are designed to be hard, and overcoming that is what makes them satisfying, but I don't play games for that reason. I like playing games for their stories. That's the sole reason I'm playing these new God of War games. So let's take a moment to appreciate that Santa Monica Studios decided that they were going to make this game as accessible as possible so people could experience their beautiful narrative. I also played on a PS4 Pro, taking advantage of the performance mode. Having a consistent 60 FPS is a lot better than some texture clarity. Okay, gameplay. As I'm going to keep saying, I never played the original series, so I had no idea how those handle or work. I remember hearing a bunch about QTEs, QuickTime events, and, well, big monster fights, but that's about it. God of War most certainly has these things, but this game is very much painted with a modern coat of paint. Due to the story-rich world of the Norse era, one might assume that the combat ended up taking a back seat. I don't feel that this is the case in any capacity. Throughout the game, we mainly play as Kratos, wielding his axe Leviathan and a retractable shield. You also have a supporting combat companion in the form of Atreus, equipped with a bow, magic arrow types, and a familiar summon. You eventually do reclaim the Blades of Chaos, Kratos' main weapon from the previous era, but this isn't until much later in the game. You're also able to attain 3 types of armor that the brothers can regularly upgrade for you, as well as have the ability to upgrade Atreus' items and Kratos' weapons. This and the skill tree go hand in hand, since skills can only be acquired once the Leviathan Axe, Blades of Chaos, or Talon Bow are upgraded. You get all sorts of creative abilities, from parrying with your shield to more intense throws, and even beyond to combo heavy and light attacks. And something I found most satisfying is that there really isn't a learning curve from one weapon to the other. The Leviathan Axe and Blades of Chaos have clearly defined movesets, but are very seamless when transitioning between. When I wanted to quickly clear out a room of enemies, I would often use the blades due to their wide range, and if I wanted to go heavy and cut down a massive enemy or two, the Leviathan Axe did the trick. Kratos also has what's called Spartan Rage, a meter-based combat type that when unleashed, Kratos hurls his fists at his enemies, causing massive damage and stun. It can also be improved to allow Kratos to heal while in that mode. This is a great ability for dealing with larger enemies, or if you just want to clear out a massive group of them all at once. Throughout all of this, the thing I absolutely loved the most was Atreus. Atreus on paper seems to be a very basic addition to the combat, and in a way he is, but how you can utilize him is what makes him so fun and effective. Since I played on the easier difficulty, I found that upgrading Atreus to max early on made a lot more tedious combat and bosses bearable. There's a mob type in this game called a Reaver. It's a witch-like monster that casts poison magic and darts around the screen, making it difficult to hit with Kratos. My main method for dealing with them was having Atreus shoot and stun them, and then finishing them off with a heavy attack. I was also able to just deal with most long-distance mobs because Atreus was strong enough to kill them on his own. Oh man, I really need to talk about the mobs and bosses in this game, because if I have one complaint, it's that. Like I said, I know God of War is known for its big monsters and flashy kills, and yes, this game has those, but not to what I was expecting. The very first fight and the very last fight in this game are fantastic. They ooze entertainment and are very fun even on story mode. But it's all the in-between. I swear to all that is holy, I could go the rest of my life without fighting another ogre or troll. The amount of reuse on these two as bosses or mini-bosses was gross. I got to the point where I would just rage up, beat them to mash, then do an execution because I couldn't be bothered to take the mob seriously. And the dragon fight. Oh my god, I hate the dragon fight. It's literally the worst. I hate puzzle boss fights. Let me just hit the darn thing, then bring it down and hit it some more. But yes, despite my flaws, the combat is very satisfying most of the time. Other times it can get frustrating, but not at the level you were probably expecting. I'll cover a little more of the combat and the story, so for now we're going to move on to the environments. Okay, I actually have two complaints about this game. I mean, if you can call this a complaint, this game is too pretty. Like, my word, it's too much. It's so visually stunning. I don't know how the heck the PS4 can even run this thing, like, dang. So I have this weird visual impairment that if things are too, well, noisy, I can't understand what I'm seeing, so stuff just sort of blends together. It kind of looks like this. I don't know, even as an artist, I still don't think I can visually represent it properly. But yeah, due to this, I had a hard time actually seeing things in the game. Mostly the climbable paths, but it would happen with even enemies and parts of puzzles. I'm not going to blame the game for that. I do love looking at it. It fills my brain with all the happy chemicals, but it did make my playthrough a tad frustrating at times. But yes, God of War is stunning. God of War is what I like to call realism done right. Despite everything having a very tangible and real look to it, there's nothing in our modern world we can really compare to some of the landscapes we run into. In the Norse era, Kratos finds himself in Midgard, mainly in a region that encircles the Lake of Nine. Within Norse mythology, Midgard is one of the 9 realms that are connected by Yggdrasil, the life tree. Midgard is a mountainous land full of lush forests, massive ravines, and large bodies of water. Kratos spends most of his time exploring the surrounding landscape, but is also able to access other realms. Alfheim, Niflheim, Helheim, Muspelheim, and Jotunheim. Midgard, obviously meant to parallel our own world, is still familiar despite being so fantastical. Dotted with old world architecture and the massive body of the world serpent Jormungandr. Every little nook and cranny is teeming with life, and there are several locations that are completely optional. I find it odd, but also very refreshing, that Santa Monica decided to create such a huge landscape, despite the fact that most of it is only used for side quests given by Brok and Sindri, or if we're so inclined to explore. The additional realms we're able to visit also have their own unique atmosphere and style. Helheim, being the first we visit, and one of the few for the main story, is full of lush, vibrant vegetation and large, inventive elvish architecture. The elves of this era have bug-like qualities, and the Dark Elves, having taken over the temple that houses the Light of Elfheim, have covered it in a hive-like material. I'm not sure how close this is to actual elvish lore in Old Norse mythology, but I do love their take. Muspelheim, the Realm of Fire, is a typical design of brimstone and rivers of lava, the same for its counterpart, Helheim, a never-ending realm of ice and souls. Muspelheim is like a trial mode sort of deal. You essentially climb the volcano and can do a series of combat trials to acquire rare crafting items. I did eventually do all of Muspelheim, but I did it off-screen because, oh man, I ain't got time for all that. Helheim, on the other hand, is another realm in which Kratos and Atreus go to during the actual story. And then Niflheim, the realm of the dead, which in God of War is told a sindri, has been turned into a massive labyrinth of ravenous monsters and toxic mists by the dwarf known as Ivaldi. It's basically a time attack. You have a limited amount of time due to the toxic mist, but as you find mist echoes, a craftable resource, it will keep the clock going. I eventually did quite a bit of it off screen because that's a lot to do, and I also needed to fight the Valkyries. We do eventually get to Jotunheim, but I'll leave that realm for the main story section. But yes, this game is insanely beautiful and the art direction is impeccable. There are so many scenes where the lighting and tone match up so well to give such a beautiful atmosphere to what is around us, especially during the more serious scenes, mainly ones involving Kratos' reflection on himself in his past. Hold on! I can't believe I approved this script without writing about the music. What is wrong with me? Dude! Bear McCreary is literally one of the reasons I wanted to play this game. I absolutely love his work, and the music for the Norse era is some of the greatest music I've ever heard. I literally couldn't do this video if I wasn't able to use the original soundtrack. Talking about the story feels impossible without it as an addition. Kruger is by far one of my favorite television and film composers, and getting to hear him add a strong flair to this new iteration of God of War only feels right. The score breathes life into this already insanely strong story. And though it's odd to state, due to the score being so perfect for the game, it does go unnoticed. It becomes a part of the world and you experience it much in the same way you do the story and the gameplay. The way the music is mixed in between character scenes and within the world is flawless. Okay, alright, now we can get on with the story. So I need to clarify on what the game offers in way of story and what I will actually be covering. Within God of War, after going through a few main story beats and getting to know Brok and Sindri, the two doors will task you with side quests called favors. These are pretty much how you gain the opportunity to explore most of Midgard. While they are lore significant to the Norse era itself, they aren't important to the main story, so yeah, I won't be covering them in full detail here. There's also a character within the story that regales Kratos and Atreus with several lore tidbits as they go along their journey. Some of this is important to the overall narrative, but just like our brothers, a lot of it can be seen as exposition for the worlds we visit. Can I also state the way this game handles having two audience surrogates is amazing? You would think this would mainly fall on Atreus being our youthful lad, but it's actually more so Kratos. Due to Atreus' upbringing, he understands a lot about the world of Midgard and the Nine Realms. Kratos is very much an outcast, and despite his short nature with the brothers and other characters, we are able to learn through him. It makes Kratos more relatable in a very satisfying way because as he learns, we learn. Okay, this is all just waffling, let's get on to the main narrative. God of War opens with Kratos standing parallel to a tree marked with a painted handprint. He contemplates recent events, then chops it down and carries it down to the river where his son, Atreus, waits. Returning home, it's revealed that these marked trees were being cut down for the pyre for his recently deceased wife, Faye. Atreus enters the home and goes to the remains, saying a small prayer before Kratos carries them to the pyre. He goes to light it, the flames consuming the departed. Atreus decides to grab his mother's knife, burning his hand in the process. Kratos tends to his son's hand and tells him to cherish the blade. As the pyre burns, Kratos instructs Atreus that the two will go off into the woods and hunt for deer. Atreus leads the way, having the skills to track the creature. They make their way through a few obstacles and come across one, Atreus firing without much thought. Kratos ends up scolding the boy, and then they carry on through the forest. The pair delve into a set of ruins to hunt after their prey, coming upon some unsightly enemies, unsure as to why they are appearing so close to their home. Making it through, Kratos finally gives Atreus a chance to prove himself, allowing him to fire upon the creature. He wounds but does not kill, Kratos instructing him to offer it a killing blow with his knife. Atreus is unable, but Kratos guides his hand into the neck of the beast. Atreus feels remorse for his actions, Kratos trying to comfort him, but he ends up stopping himself. Before the two can reconcile about their situation, the carcass of the deer is taken by an aggressive troll and the two must fight it. This is technically the first boss fight of the game. It's fairly straightforward. The creature does have weak points, but I just found the easiest solution was to dodge its attacks, then just swing away with Kratos until it's toppled. I would also like to note for the final time in the story section that I did play on the easiest difficulty, so of course the bosses aren't really much in the way of difficult. After the troll is toppled, Atreus will lash out at it with his knife, Kratos immediately stopping him, scolding him again for his actions. Atreus protests, insisting he is ready to fight and that his sickness hasn't come back in a long time. Kratos is adamant in his words, saying they are to return home. They are again attacked by enemies, Atreus not understanding how they managed to get so close to their home. Kratos demands he goes inside, then collects some of the ashes of the now burnt pyre. He laments over their presence for a moment, then retires along with Atreus. The two share a moment about Atreus' anger until they are interrupted by a disturbance outside. A stranger's voice calls out and Kratos urges Atreus under the house. Kratos opens the door to reveal a heavily tattooed individual with an inebriated mentality. He insists to Kratos that he knows what he seeks, Kratos taking on an indignant demeanor in an effort to intimidate the uninvited guest. The stranger merely laughs it off and taunts Kratos, going so far as to strike him. Kratos, in his usual fashion, retaliates, the stranger elated by this. The fight with the stranger is possibly one of the most entertaining cinematic fights I've experienced in a while. It will go through a few areas and will also introduce us to Spartan Rage. The final bout with him ends with the cliff face cracking in two. The stranger will remark that the whole time during the fight he has felt no pain or tiredness from it. Kratos, finally having enough of this, manages to overcome him, breaking his neck and throwing him off the edge. He struggles to return home, battered by the encounter, uncertain as to who the individual was. Kratos collects Atreus and insists they must leave, their goal to reach the highest peak in all the realms to spread the ashes of Fae. Atreus wonders who the stranger was, Kratos urging him to keep moving. The two reach a high cliff face and see the protection stay that encircled their home had been broken, hinting at to why so many enemies have been recently seen in their woods. Kratos nearly states they must keep moving. This is where the primary plot of the story begins, Kratos and Atreus going on their journey to fulfill the last wishes of the recently departed Fae. From this moment onward, I won't be covering every enemy encounter or dungeon in detail because that's just a natural part of gaming. And though the dialogue can be important from time to time, as I stated before, this is not the point of this section, or the overall point of the video. As the duo journey on, they cross through forests and ruins only to be preyed upon by a group of unsavory individuals, Reavers as the game calls them. Essentially, the land of Midgard is no longer home to what can be considered normal folk. Most of them have either been taken by blight or foul magic. Kratos fights the majority of them off, but one manages to attack Atreus, Kratos immediately going to the aid of his son. Atreus, though rescued, feels defeated, taking his time to aid Kratos in continuing their journey. Kratos chides him, saying they will just return home, Atreus taking offense to this and pushing forward. Coming to a pass, they happen upon an azure dwarven smith, Brok, his beast of burden having buckled due to a fear of something beyond the trees. Atreus tells him of this, Brok insisting he prove it. Kratos throws his axe into the adjacent tree line, the creatures fleeing. With the beast now moving again, Brok introduces himself and remarks that the axe Kratos is carrying was created by himself and his brother. He insists that only the two may work on it so as not to ruin it beyond repair. Kratos doesn't believe him. Brok just remarks the brand on the grip, Kratos looking over it. Brok shows the bottom half of the brand as proof and offers to work on it. Kratos and Atreus fight off the enemies that had hidden the tree line, then carry off with their journey. Atreus happy to have met the dwarf. Coming across the boar, Atreus takes aim trying to take it down, but the arrow bounces off the beast's hide and it runs off, the two tracking it through a burnt-out gathering of homes and deeper into the forest. The boar appearing again, Atreus is able to strike it, but once again it runs off into a labyrinth of mist. Atreus runs after it, Kratos following, with Atreus' knife, which the boy had dropped. Making his way quickly through the mist, due to the panicked cries of Atreus, Kratos comes out to a clearing where a mysterious individual is knelt down next to the wounded boar, Atreus with her. She is dubbed the Witch of the Wood. The witch will protest to Kratos for help in aiding her animal friend, and Kratos does. Though apprehensive of the pair, the witch asks for her to carry her friend back to her home, which is nestled in the middle of a serene wood and under a massive turtle. Inside, she gives additional healing to the boar, then asks if Atreus can fetch her some ingredients. After the boy leaves, she notes that she knows Kratos is a god and wonders if Atreus knows this immediately putting Kratos on edge. She tells him that the gods of these realms don't like outsiders and will attempt to make things difficult for him when they find out. Kratos doesn't want to hear it, but she goes on and then eventually sends him out to find more ingredients for her. Kratos does so, then goes to Atreus, returning his knife to him. He makes a note of him losing it, Atreus understanding the consequences of his brash actions earlier. The witch uses what she was given to give additional aid to the boar, then applies a protection stay to the duo so as to keep them invisible to unwanted enemies. She then allows them to leave through the cavern below her home. The two travel through the cave to a boat and out into a massive lake surrounded by high mountains and decrepit statues. They come across a statue covered in writing, Atreus reading it off. The riddle insists they toss a weapon into the water, Kratos deciding to do this with Leviathan. Hurling it into the lake, he waits for a moment then tries to recall her, the axe not returning. The water beginning to move and shake, the world serpent Jormungandr appears, speaking to them in a dialect Atreus cannot understand, but he insists, due to being told by his mother, that the serpent is friendly. So I would technically consider Jormungandr a character in this series, but I mean, I don't really need to explain who or what he is, though I realize some people probably aren't familiar with Norse mythology. Jormungandr, or the World Serpent, is said to be so large he encircles the whole of Midgard and eventually goes toe-to-toe with Thor. His God of War counterpart spends pretty much most of his time hanging around the lake and is occasionally spoken to. There is obviously a lot more to him in terms of the overall Norse era, but we gotta move on. Though I will say, I love Jormi. He's our big buddy and he doesn't trigger my megalophobia. With the repositioning of the serpent, a massive temple has emerged from the water, surrounded by large towers and statues of Aesir gods. The two make their way to the temple and come upon Brok and his beast at the entrance of the temple's center chamber. Brok opens up the large doors and introduces the duo to his shop. He also gives them access to mystic gateways, which allows them to travel in between. Though as of right now, they can only go back to Brok's shop. The whole area that has now been revealed is called the Lake of Nine, the massive ornate temple being simply named Tyr's Temple, Tyr being the Norse god of war. The two carry on down the massive bridge and through the Vanaheim Tower Gate, a path broken into the tower leading directly to the mountain they wish to climb. Finally getting to the foothills, they happen upon another dwarf, Atreus wanting to meet him, Kratos wanting to move on. This is the other half of the brothers, Sindri. Sindri notices them, but more so notices Leviathan. He asks how they came by her, Kratos stating that it is none of his concern. Sindri steps in front of him, noting that he made it, but he didn't make it for Kratos, remarking he was fond of her original owner, challenging him in an effort to take her back. Atreus says it belonged to his mother Faye, who has passed on. Sindri, dejected by this news, apologizes for their loss and states how she was a strong warrior and a good woman. He composes himself and offers his services to work on the axe, even though the two didn't ask. Sindri insists due to knowing his brother Brok had worked on it. Atreus is elated by the news, having a feeling that Sindri was Brok's brother. Kratos allows Sindri to work on the axe on the grounds he will only add to what Brok has done, not remove it. Sindri, hesitant to take Leviathan due to being covered in blood, tries to get Kratos to set her aside for him. Kratos refuses, so Sindri awkwardly moves it, gagging and remarking at its disgusting nature. He finally goes about cleaning out the axe and returns her with new enchantments. Sindri, unlike Brok, generally has a lot more going on in the way of dialogue and exposition due to him being peppered throughout the realms in the main story, whereas Brok spends most of the story beats in his shop, though he can be seen in other locations from time to time. Sindri also just has this need to over-explain things, as well as give his colorful 2 cents on his brother every time the duo happen upon him. Yeah, Sindri's got a lot to say. Whether it's relevant most of the time, that's up for debate. But he's cute and we love him, so he gets a pass. Can I mention really quickly how, unfortunate it is that Sindri is literally, I don't know, a stone's throw from Brok's main shop? I get that they needed to introduce him because in any normal playthrough, this is about 3 hours in, and he's meant to be a central character, but still, in terms of upgrading gear and shop placement, there's almost no reason for these shops to be this close together. Who knows, maybe there's a lore reason, perhaps they're just both spying on each other so they make sure one is eating and the other is safe. Let's go with that, because that version's adorable. After sticking to the dwarf for a few moments more, the duo will continue upward the old pass and not the skylift because Sindri hasn't been able to fix it, even remarking he has no idea how it actually works, but he'll figure it out. Before reaching the base of the mountain, the duo must take down another large enemy in the way of an ogre. This, like the troll fight, is fairly straightforward. I generally found myself just saving up my Spartan rage for both mobs and just unleashing it to end the fight fairly quickly. The pair now finds themselves at the base of the mountain. Climbing up a set of old stone stairs, they come across what appears to be an impenetrable cascade of black mist. The two are unsure of what to do until the witch appears. She greets them both and says that only the pure light of Alfheim can get through it. Kratos wonders why she's helping them. She insists it's the right thing to do. Following her back down the mountain, she releases the skylift from a mass of vines and says to use it even though they insist it's broken, Sindri having told them. She is unsure as to who that is, saying she didn't see a dwarf at the foot of the mountain. They go back down the mountain and pass the Vanaheim Gate and into Tyr's Temple. She instructs Kratos to move the bridge of the tower, Kratos using his big Kratos dad muscles to do just that. Brok, just like Sindri, is nowhere to be seen at the entry of the temple. The witch gives Atreus a small bit of her enchantment that she used to activate the light bridges, then takes them inside. The massive control room of the temple houses several gates to the other realms, as well as an interpretation of the life tree. There's a ridiculous amount of exposition during this part, but it's mainly talking about Yggdrasil and the understanding of it within the Norse era. I'll give a brief rundown. Within Norse mythology, Yggdrasil, the life tree, connects all 9 realms to one another. Within the Norse era, it is a tangible object that is in a space that's called the realm between realms. It is what is used to travel to other locations as long as one has access to the Bifrost, which is used as a key of sorts to house the light of Alfheim. After the group successfully travels to Alfheim, the Bifrost depletes and the witch states that the only way to get back to Midgard is to replenish it. Entering the beautiful realm, the witch points out the most notable landmark, a large shaft of light beyond the horizon. Before she can continue, her body begins to change and is pulled back towards the temple. Kratos grabs her, trying to keep her there, but she is torn away. Atreus worries that she's dead, Kratos noting that that is most likely not the case. Now on their own again, they make their way down the bridge and notice everything is covered in an organic hive-like material. Getting to the other side, they see a group of dark elves killing a light elf. Atreus wonders why they're fighting, Kratos insisting it's none of their concern. The duo once again come across Sindri, Kratos wondering how he got there. Sindri tries to be colorful about it, but eventually just says it's a type of magic his people, dwarves, can learn. Kratos manages to free a boat and they take the river deeper into the realm. Atreus tells Kratos that though his mother spoke little about the realm, she did mention that due to their constant fighting over the light, they generally remained isolated from the others. Going further down the river, Atreus insists he can hear voices, Kratos hearing none. They begin to overwhelm Atreus noting that there are many and they all appear to be crying out in anger. The symptoms subside and they carry on. Getting to a massive body of water in front of a temple, they dock and look over a sand bowl. This is an environmental puzzle we were introduced earlier. In order to progress, the runes for the answer to the riddle must be found and carved into the bowl. The two get back to the boat and go to the other side where the entrance to the temple lies. Before being able to progress forward, they are attacked by several dark elves. Once the enemies are cleared out, the duo can use the mechanisms around them and reveal large runes within the lake. The lake begins to split in two, revealing a large underground. The sandal turns into a lift, carrying them down. Here, they are confronted by what appears to be a dark elf of note, and are attacked as they make their way towards the main temple. Traversing through several obstacles, they get to a landing where they must free a large portion of light, this also clearing a large portion of the hive-like material. I suppose the Ancient here is technically a boss. It gets its own health bar, but Ancients are only really a pain if they manage to catch you off guard. They have a spot on their chest that, when opened, allows them to attack, but also becomes the one place where you can hit them to do damage. They do spit out these bomb-like objects you can throw at them, but I just found it was easy to find a good place to stand and hurl your axe at them until they go down, and then you can just do the execution. Taking down the creature, they are now able to free the light, and several of the light bridges as well as the main one are now active. They make their way to the primary area and can now go to the proper entrance of the inner temple. Crossing over the bridge and going to the right, they once again come upon Sindri. Sindri will show his excitement over them killing the Ancient, but Kratos refuses to elaborate further, causing the dwarf a bit of frustration. You can get quite a bit of exposition about Sindri during this part in the game, but I won't cover all of it in detail, just briefly. Sindri will explain why he is so clean, and at another point Atreus will ask him why Brok is blue. Kratos rightfully calling out Atreus, boy, that's rude. According to Sindri, it's because Brok prefers to work with his bare hands, and being around so many raw alloys, especially silver, has changed his appearance. Leaving the dwarf be, the two will continue into the sanctum and confront more of the hive-like structures and dark elves. Making it to the core that surrounds the light, Kratos will be able to destroy the whole of the hive and free it. The two find themselves at the center of the temple, the unfathomable light of Alfheim in front of them. Atreus goes to touch it, the light feeling as if he's put it into a fire. Kratos takes a moment then tells Atreus to stay put, handing him Leviathan as he does. Kratos then takes the Bifrost and enters the light. He's met with a monochromatic-like dream world, hearing the voices of his son echo in his mind as he traverses through it. Getting to an unfamiliar bridge, Kratos calls for his wife, only to be pulled out of the light and back into Alfheim by Atreus. Kratos, clearly upset, protests the boy, but Atreus hits back, stating he's been gone for a long time, upset that his father left him alone. Several bodies of Dark Elves being an indication that the boy was left to fend for himself. Kratos, after collecting himself, uses the Bifrost on Atreus' bow, thus giving the ability to use light arrows and light up crystals that are scattered around the temple. Atreus spends much of their time returning back to Tyr's temple, showing clear frustration with his father. The two manage to open the sealed door from before, the light elves pouring in to reclaim the temple. Going back to the lake, the dark elf of importance reappears and the two make their way back down to the underground area, the roof closing back up, shrouding them in darkness. Getting back to the beginning, the duo are attacked by Svjardolfjord? I think that's how you say it, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't really have a strategy for this fight. It's not hard, but it can be annoying because he spends a lot of his time doing aerial attacks, though this boss is just a stronger version of the normal Dark Elf enemies, so by the time you get to him, it's really just a case of paying attention to where he lands and using Atreus to chip away at him while he's in the air. The Dark Elf is taken down, speaking to the pair in Elvish before perishing. Atreus translates, the elves saying that they had made a mistake. Atreus tries to ask Kratos about this, but his father's reply causes him to become frustrated, calling out his father's unwillingness to share insight on the situation. The two finally make it back to the river, and Atreus wonders if Kratos saw Faye in the light. Kratos says no, and Atreus again retaliates with his frustration, stating Kratos wouldn't have cared. This sets off Kratos, scolding his son for his cold remark. He states that one must be focused for their journey, and not to mistake his silence for lack of grief. He adds that he wishes to be left alone to his own way of mourning. Atreus, realizing his mistake, apologizes and the two reconcile over what had occurred at the temple. Getting back to shore, Sindri will remark on the recent events, though Kratos obviously doesn't care to talk about it. You do technically have access to Sindri's first favor, but we're not going to cover those in this section, so back to Tyr's temple. Finally, back in Midgard, the two exit into Brok's shop, Atreus telling him that they had run into Sindri. Brok merely asks if Sindri had touched Leviathan, stating that he no longer had any talent. Brok insists looking over the axe, Kratos obliging. Despite Brok assuming Sindri did a bad job, Kratos states otherwise. Brok looks over it and cruelly remarks that his brother didn't do a bad job, then taps it with his hammer, still insisting he's the better of the two. Kratos asks what he did, Brok just saying he made it better. Again, just like Sindri, this is now the point where you can access Brok's first favor, but we won't be talking about it here. Now that the duo had the light of Elfheim within the Bifrost, they were able to make their way back up the mountain and cut through the massive waterfall of Black Breath. The two climb and enter yet another blockade of black mist. Expelling it, they carry on through a small shrine and ascend through the mountain's interior. From what the duo can tell, the mountain was mainly home to giants that once lived in Midgard, the two not really knowing what happened to them, Atreus often being told by his mother that they had just suddenly left. As they make their way past old trats and enemies, the two eventually get to a small bit of respite as Atreus happens upon what appears to be an old lantern. Kratos tells him to leave it be, and they carry on. They finally reach what is considered to be the heart of the mountain and see a large amount of machinery that should be able to take them to the top. Atreus goes about messing with the controls and ends up causing the counterweight to get stuck. Kratos reprimands him, and now they must find a way to free it. As the two make their way around, they happen upon Brok? I don't know why he's here, but boy, it's nice to see him. Brok will give some colorful exposition on the mountain and the undead that roam it, as well as asking about a rather odd Aesir individual. Kratos remains short with the dwarf, and the two carry on. Getting over to the counterweight, Kratos is able to lift the large boulder, holding it down, and they can now move forward. Well, they gotta fight a troll first, now they can carry on. The massive crane takes them high up into the mountain. Getting to a landing, Atreus happens upon another one of the lanterns. He noticed this one's notes something about a Jotun prayer. He also realizes he can light it and begins to write on it. Lighting it and letting it go, it floats high into the quiet cavern. Kratos asks the boy what he wrote, Atreus saying he asked for his mother to be watched over and wondered if the same would happen for them. Kratos nearly urges them forward. After freeing the lift, they're able to ascend even higher, but the climb isn't an easy one. The lift will get stuck a few times, the duo are encountering several enemies, but what lies at the top is the biggest surprise. The dragon hears Lear? I think? These Norse words really be tripping me up sometimes. The massive dragon tears into the lift, Kratos managing to fight them off. The creature uses its impressive lightning breath and blows through a mass of crystallized red sap, its tail carrying the duo with them. They tumble off into an open cavern and notice more of the red sap, this emanating from the world tree itself. Getting through the obstacles, the pleas and screams of a familiar voice can be heard. It's unfortunately Sindri. The two make their way out to a large flat area, Sindri hiding behind a rock, desperately trying not to be killed by the dragon. Atreus, desperate to save the dwarf, wonders if his father can take down something that big. Son, yes he can, he's done it many times before. Kratos instructs him to go to Sindri's aid while he goes around the other side. Leaping onto its back, he gets in one good strike on its head, landing next to Atreus. The boy tries to help, but Kratos pushes him aside and lands in the mouth of the beast. With a few good strikes, the main fight begins. I hate this fight. Like, I know I'm bad at games, but this fight is just gross. So the dragon will hurl lightning at you, and in order to hurt it, you have to throw the little red crystal bomb things at it. Seems straightforward, right? Yeah, until you realize the dragon also lays down basically lightning mine bombs, and the bomb things can explode if those hit you. So you're stuck trying to suss out the timing until you do it enough times to where the head falls down and you attack it. Oh, and you can't just deal as much damage as you want when this happens. Each segment has a certain amount, which drags the fight on longer than it needs to be. You can attack its claws at certain points, but no, it's not fun. It's really tedious. Once it's down enough health, Kratos instructs Atreus to drop the crane that dangled above, Kratos taking it and smashing it through the dragon. He's hurled through the air and lands on a cliff face, the dragon's open maw finally coming to a stop in front of him. Atreus lets out his excitement at the defeat, even goes so far as attempting to hug Sindri as he approaches, Sindri fiercely declining. Sindri looks over the carnage impressed by the feat, stating how no one has killed a dragon in a long time. He looks to Kratos and remarks with a grin how he feels that the incredible feat was done just for him. Kratos just straight up telling him no. He didn't do it for you, Sindri. Sindri, still elated by the heroism, feels the two deserve a reward. He takes out a bundle of arrows made from braided mistletoe, handing them to Atreus, Atreus merely saying thank you. Sindri less than thrilled by the boy's response. Sindri begins to rummage through his bag, pulling out all manner of objects. As he does, he's asked if they've seen Brok again, Atreus stating that Brok said Sindri had lost his talent. Sindri goes on a tirade about his brother's cruelty, only to stop himself with disgust at the sight of a fish in his bag. Kratos, done with Sindri's, Sindriness, decides to leave, Sindri stopping him and asking if Kratos can grab a tooth from the dragon. Kratos complies and removes the tooth, taking it over to the dwarf at his workshop. Sindri refuses to touch it instead. He pulls out, I guess, magic, and blows it onto the tooth. He asks Kratos to run it down Atreus' bowstring, Kratos doing so. Sindri instructs the boy to aim at the large mass of crystallized sap. Sindri will go about explaining how it works, but realizes that the two don't care and grumbles away. You can get additional dialogue of Sindri explaining how he came to know how to imbue the bow, it having something to do with his time in Vanaheim. This heavily implying that Sindri also knows how to use Vanir magic. Having a new tool at their disposal, the duo make their way through the last leg of the caves, then empty out into a snowy path where the whole of the Lake of Nine can be seen. Ahead of them is the summit, crowned by what appears to be old ruins, greenery, and a tree. Kratos, noticing that Atreus' quiver is loose, he takes one of Atreus' arrows and uses the head of the mistletoe to secure it before carrying on. Getting to the base of the ruins, voices can be heard. Kratos and Atreus must climb around, the owners of the voice made visible as they reach the tree. One is the stranger who attacked them earlier on, the others, noted by the voice from the tree, are the sons of Thor. The stranger offers to help the man in the tree, the voice finally naming him Baldur. Within Norse mythology, Baldur is seen as being beautiful, kind, and a force of light and good within the realm, and is one of the many sons of Odin. He seems to be quite the opposite with his Norse-era counterpart. Baldur, played by Jeremy Data, seems to be far from his original interpretation. He's a crass, unfeeling psychopath who wants nothing more than to bring potential ruin to Kratos and Atreus, and it appears he will be continuing his conquest with the aid of his nephews, the sons of Thor. The group leaves and Kratos and Atreus are able to climb to the top. Kratos asks Atreus to see if they are alone while the man in the tree converses with him. Kratos asks who he is, the man stating he is Mimir, ambassador to all 9 realms and the smartest man alive. Mimir is one of those characters that you could quite literally make an entire video on, and I'm sure many have, I myself might one day, so explaining who and what he is in a bite-sized paragraph might be a bit tricky. I'll wait to cover what I feel I can on him later. For now, we'll just carry on like normal. Mimir, after he states his title, says he can answer any question, Kratos asking why Baldur hunts him. Mimir rightfully put in his place. He notes how long he's been there as Atreus makes his way back over to them. They tell Nefe's passing and that they were told to spread her ashes upon the highest peak in all the realms. Mimir sadly states that the place that they are looking for is not the summit, it is in fact in Jotunheim. The two show their frustration at this news. Mimir's eye begins to glow, and the archway opposite of them reveals what appears to be an image of Jotunheim. Atreus wonders if they can use the Bifrost to go through it. Mimir states that the gate requires a special rune that only a giant would know how to use. Atreus says all the giants have left Midgard, but Mimir retorts saying that in fact he may be able to find it. He instructs Kratos to cut off his head, Kratos hesitating. Mimir insists it's the only way, saying that not even the power of Thor's hammer could break through the tree. He says they can reanimate him if they find someone who knows how to use old magic, Kratos mentioning the witch in the woods the duo had met previously. Kratos isn't sure if this plan will work. Mimir mentions to him that Odin spends every day torturing him, and that what he's been going through isn't what he would call living. Kratos takes this as his cue, Atreus looking away. Before Kratos beheads Mimir, Mimir, seeing what Kratos is, remarks that he shouldn't hide it from Atreus. Kratos, wanting nothing to do with the conversation, cuts off Mimir's head. Fastening the head to the back of his belt, Kratos and Atreus now make their way to the Witch of the Woods. The path essentially leads back to the Mystic Gateway at the foot of the cliff, so the two enter and return back to Brok's shop. Atreus runs over trying to get his attention, Brok just chewing on a piece of meat. He eventually ends up roaring at Atreus for interrupting him. Kratos tells the boy to leave the dwarf alone. Brok, despite his agitation, asks them to stay. Atreus says they saw Sindri again, Brok just wondering what he may have done to the Leviathan. Kratos hands her over and Brok takes a moment to look at his brother's work, asking quietly if Sindri had been eating. Giving it a good tap with his hammer, he throws her back to Kratos and goes about being his usual crass self. He'll add additional dialogue noting how Sindri wasn't much of an eater and how Brok was generally the one who did all the cooking. Atreus says he misses him, Brok brushing him off. Atreus will also wonder where his beast went, Brok saying that he, ate her. Yeah, let's carry on. The two make their way back to the Witch of the Woods and hope she can reanimate Mimir's head. Upon entering the turtle, we find out his name is Charlie, Kratos unamused by the name. Hello Charlie, he's such a good boy. The two enter the home of the witch, Atreus happy to see that she's still alive. She greets him with a warm hug and then Atreus bluntly asks if she can bring someone's head back to life. Unsure as to what he means, she soon sees the mistletoe arrows and demands he hand them over. Atreus hesitant, but Kratos telling him to. Atreus does and she burns them in the fire, urging them to destroy any they see due to how dangerous they potentially are. Atreus agrees and she regains her composure, getting Atreus a bundle of her own arrows. She then asks about the head, Kratos holding up Mimir. She is shocked, asking if they knew who he was and if they had killed him, Kratos stating he did at Mimir's request. Though hesitant, she complies, using her magic to bring him back. Gotta make that Mimir soup! The light in Mimir's eye quite literally comes back as he sputters and coughs. The witch asks to see him, asking if he's back. He states yes, and she proceeds to spit on his face. Mimir finally reveals the name of the Witch of the Woods, Freya. Freya, or Frigg, in Norse mythology is primarily known as the wife of Odin, as well as the goddess of love and beauty. She is played by Daniela Dasutti in the Norse era, and I won't say too much because this will spoil segments of the game's storyline, but her in-game counterpart follows fairly closely to what she is in lore. Though the most obvious distinction being she is no longer in Asgard and seems to be bound to the realm of Midgard, this being shown by her egress from Alfheim. Freya is less than pleased to see Mimir, saying that death suited him better. Mimir, upon realizing the Witch of the Woods was Freya, says he wouldn't have asked the duo to bring him to her if he knew her true identity. Atreus, surprised, asks if she's really Freya. Freya tells Kratos that once Odin finds out Mimir is free, his wrath won't be far. Kratos is more concerned with the secret Freya had kept from them, her godhood. He tries to call her out on it, but Freya rightly throws the notion back in his face, clearly pointing out that he too is hiding such a secret. Kratos urges for them to leave, the two doing so. Atreus, not understanding, asks his father why they cannot trust her, Kratos steadily blunting it is because she is a god, and gods in any form or fashion are not to be trusted. Mimir tries to interject on the matter, but Kratos silences him. To continue on their journey, Mimir tells them to go back to Tyr's temple, where they can speak to the last known remaining giant in Midgard, Jormungandr. This means her giant snake friend is actually one of the Jotun. Atreus, surprised, wonders if Mimir can actually talk to the world's serpent, Mimir stating he can, though he's only ever spoken it when drunk. Getting back to the temple, the gang will go across the bridge to a platform that can be raised. Mimir will ask Kratos to help him summon the serpent, allowing him to blow on the horn. Jormungandr appears, destroying the statue of Thor, a deity he's got beef with, and then begins to talk to Mimir. Mimir says the serpent understands their loss and agrees to help, moving the bridge to the far side of the lake, the water beginning to drop even further. In order for them to progress to the rune into Jotunheim, they must find a special kind of chisel. Now that Mimir is a primary staple of the group, any time spent in the boat going around Midgard, Mimir will regale the two with several stories of myth, himself, and other characters we encounter. It's a literal book's worth of information, so I won't be covering any of it unless I feel it's absolutely necessary. Though for a lore fan like myself, Mimir is excellent at filling in the world in a fairly organic manner. I really praise the developers for basically a simple story time being how we, the players, and our main duo learn about the world. Finding their way towards the colder region of Midgard, Mimir tells them the chisel they seek once belonged to a giant named Thamur. He being what many would consider a proper giant, he was a big lad. He also unfortunately seeks of his turmoil and ultimate demise to the god of thunder himself, Thor. The massive body of Thamur comes into view, frozen solid and covered by several years of snow, his large frame lying on what used to be a thriving fishing village. Traversing under the giant and across an ice plain, they get to a point where the ice is clear, seeing the tip of the chisel, which had been impaled through the giant's skull below them. Mimir insists that not even Thor could get through it, but Kratos has a plan. Mimir jokes about it, Kratos unamused by this. After taking down another handful of enemies, it reveals that on a platform above, Sindri was watching the whole time. The dwarf kicks a chain down to them, and they are able to climb up to the shop. Sindri condemns them on the fight, offering Kratos an apple, Kratos splitting it in half with his axe. Kratos asks how he is here, stating that there is nowhere to hide. Sindri, in his usual colorful manner, goes about explaining that his people, dwarves, have the capability to walk through the realm between realms. This is how they can seem invisible or suddenly be from one point to another. He also notes this is why his people never have to use the weapons they make. He does this trick without much thought in front of Atreus, then appears, getting the lad an apple, then stating the magic sadly doesn't work with dragons. Atreus tells Sindri that Brok was wondering if he was eating enough, Atreus noting the apple, saying that he can assume he is. Sindri, surprised, wonders that when Brok asked him if he had mead on his breath. Kratos, I assume tired of the dwarves' antics, throws his axe next to Sindri's head. Sindri grasps at the implied violence, but is overcome with the realization that Brok had once again touched Leviathan. Frustrated, he struggles to pull the axe out of the stone, then carries it over to his workshop. Atreus follows, now realizing how Brok made it to the temple so quickly after the water of the lake had dropped. Sindri again seems to do what dwarves do, and hits the axe with his hammer, implying it is now better than it was. So everyone's gonna boo me if I don't mention it. Yes, the whole apple throwing thing is a real thing in Greek customs / mythology. I looked it up to verify it. Sindri's implication to Kratos in Greek when throwing an apple is that of proposal, an obvious reason as to why Kratos destroyed it. I want to say, just to defend my boy, I don't believe Sindri knew this. He wouldn't have done it if he did. This is obviously a developer / writer joke put in, just for any history or mythology buffs to pick up on. God, I wish we had just gotten a scene though of him finding out later on, Sindri probably wanting to scrub his entire brain afterwards. But he suffered enough trauma, we don't need to add more. The group make their way up the ruins and around the body of the giant himself to enact Kratos' plan. Atreus and Mimir will ask about it, but Kratos tells them that they must figure it out on their own. They eventually get close to the large hammer, managing to free a bit of it from the ice, though not enough to see it fall. Atreus finally figures out what his father's plan is. Drop the giant's hammer to smash the ice. Getting to the strap that's restraining it, Kratos gets it free, but the hammer topples to the opposite direction. They must now climb higher, coming upon another Sambo puzzle that uses an old type of magic to elevate them upwards. Finally getting to the top and freeing the hammer, Atreus wonders how they get down as the fall begins. Kratos nearly says they jump and grabs the boy, leaping onto the massive object. The two come crashing down, Kratos taking most of the fall as they tumble down into the chasm below. He stops the hammer from squishing them, and they are able to now safely enter the chamber that was under the ice. The chisel they seek is not far off. They make their way around several obstacles only to hear the faint familiar voices in the distance. It's Magni and Modi, the sons of Thor, the two who were with Balder at the summit. Atreus asks about them, Mimir stating they, much like their father, are an unfavorable sort, but despite being seen as lesser gods, are still ones to watch out for. Mimir assures Sindri will be fine, referring to the dwarven magic they were told of earlier. Going through yet another troll and some other enemies in an old dilapidated dining hall, the gang happen upon Sindri again, Sindri stating that he knew it was best to hide when he saw the brothers show up. Getting what upgrades are needed out of the way, they head through the exit and more ramblings of the brothers can be heard. Finally getting to the platform where they can access the chisel, they notice the brothers are nowhere in sight. Before they can retrieve the item, the corpse of an ogre falls in front of them, Magni atop it. He asks them to surrender, Kratos saying no, Magni elated by this news. Kratos tells Atreus to run, but he's stopped by Modi. Without warning, the brothers attack. Magni and Modi, as mentioned in the story, are the sons of Thor. Within actual Norse mythology, Magni seems to be the only one that lines up with much of what Mimir will tell the boys, Modi really having little to do in the actual fables. Within the game's story, it looks like the victories of Magni have been split between the two of them, the one notable one being that they, at a very young age, managed to free their father from the unmovable stone corpse of a giant. Sindri will also mention they have a sister, but Kratos will stop him before naming her. The brothers, much like their father, are seen as crude, cruel, and aggressive. They spend much of their time during the fight antagonizing and belittling not only Kratos and Atreus, but even Faye. They're also respectively played by Troy Baker and Nolan North. I laughed when I found this out. It's basically like a "oh hi Mark" when these two show up in a game. Good old voice acting comfort food. I honestly don't really know how you're supposed to do this fight. I fumble my way through it every time because I had difficulty keeping up with one brother or the other. Magni is very much the more aggressive of the two, fighting with a large sword, whereas Modi uses a shield and a mace. Both are able to dish out lightning-based attacks as well. Taking out one brother at a time seems to be the key though. Each one will take a certain amount of hits until their stun bar fills, then you can wail on the other one. Just carry on with this pattern. Eventually they will pull Kratos and Atreus into a QTE-based segment where, oh man, the story mode is super forgiving with. Like, I said in the very beginning of the script, I played this game while I was super ill with the global ick, so having that leeway was so nice. Finally having enough with Modi, Atreus pulls out his knife and goes to attack him. Kratos, concerned for his son, frees himself from Magni's assault and deals a vicious killing blow. Modi flees in fear, Atreus shooting at him as the brother escapes. Atreus begins to cough, blood on his hand. Kratos feels his forehead, noticing a fever. Atreus insists he's fine, Mimir urging Kratos to take him to Freya. They grab a piece of the chisel and are now able to gain access to the hidden part of Tyr's temple. Both Brok and Sindri will remark on the death of Magni and the current whereabouts of Modi. Brok giving his general colorful dialogue and Sindri swearing one of the 3 times he ever will across both games.
Hey, did you hear? Magni, the Aesir god, son of Thor, dead! I know! Now Modi's on a rampage across Midgard, looking for the killer, swearing that once he finds him, he'll... Oh shit, that was you guys.
Sindri, did you just swear? You don't swear, Sindri. He's a good boy. He doesn't like to swear. Atreus assures the others he is fine and they decide to go to the sealed door to find the Black Rune. Entering, we see another familiar symbol and one of the many triptychs they've happened upon in their journey. I haven't mentioned these until now because they are technically optional lore tidbits, but this one is a part of the story. It shows a depiction of the Aesir-Vanir War and then the capturing of Tyr, the largest middle section gone. Going over to the symbol, Atreus offers to help Kratos learn how to read the runes. This scene is so cute. I love when Kratos tries to be a dad to Atreus. It's the most adorable thing. Before Atreus can really go on with the lesson, Kratos stops in, the two noticing they can smell rain. Modi appears, hurling lightning at Kratos and pinning him down. Atreus tries to free his father, but Modi just throws him aside. Atreus is overcome with anger and what appears to be Kratos' Spartan rage, but collapses. Kratos frees himself from Modi's attack and slams him into a column. Modi once again runs off, Kratos more concerned with Atreus than the defeated Aesir. Kratos carries Atreus to a boat and they make their way to Freya's home. Kratos, unsure as to what is happening, asks Mimir, wondering if it has something to do with the fact that Atreus sees himself as immortal and not a god like his father. Kratos rushes the boy to Freya's home. She remarks that she is still a god and for him to go away. He yells that Atreus is sick, Freya immediately letting them in. She looks over Atreus and said that it's because of Kratos that he is ill, pointing to his godhood and Spartan spirit. Kratos is disheartened by this, asking if she will help. She says she will, saying he needs to attain the heart of the Keeper that dwells within Helheim, the realm of the dead within the 9 realms. She remarks that it is a world of unyielding ice and that the axe will have no effect on those who inhabit it. Kratos understands what he must do. Freya assures him that all that matters is that he helps save Atreus. Freya gives him the rune to open Helheim, then Kratos makes his way back to his home to retrieve what is capable of aiding him. The sky is darkened as Kratos sails down the river, visions of his past coming to haunt him. Athena. Kratos enters his home and goes over to the floor, opening it and pulling out a large wrapped item. He opens the bundle, the rusted and ruined blades of chaos staring back at him. He begins to don their chains once more, Athena speaking to him from the corners of his mind. She laments over his past transgressions, saying he will never change who he is, calling him a monster. Kratos agrees but states that he is no longer hers. He exits his home and is met with a horde of Hellwalkers, the foe quickly vanquished by the explosive embers of the blades. Now that Kratos has what he needs, he and Mimir will return to Tyr's temple. Mimir noting that he knew Kratos was Greek, but the mention of Athena made it a dead giveaway. Entering the temple, Brok immediately, smells the blades and storms over to Kratos, flabbergasted by the sight of them. Brok insists they must be some kind of heirloom, Kratos shutting down the notion. Brok mentions that he and Sindri created Mjolnir, so he knows fine craftsmanship when he sees it. Brok soon realizes Atreus isn't around, asking about him. Kratos says he's sick, Brok wondering if it's the AC or Kratos stating it is because of himself. Brok offers to go with Kratos, wanting to help. Kratos telling him that his work at the shop has been more than enough. Brok asks where Kratos is going, he responds Helheim, the dwarf surprised by that. After taking a moment to converse with Brok, Kratos is now ready to enter Helheim. Mimir will note that not even Odin can survive in Helheim and that what Kratos is doing is insane, but he is still willing to give Kratos the knowledge to help find the Keeper. Traversing over a large bridge and through several enemies, Kratos finally comes out to the other side of the gate and confronts what he seeks, which is another troll. Mind you, he's a cool troll with gimmicks that make him mildly interesting to fight, but a troll nonetheless. The Matiger Helson? I really am butchering all these pronunciations. The Keeper has a few pattern attacks. These cause him to teleport to a few corners of the arena and either let out some shockwaves that you can either block or dodge, and then some magical projectiles. You can also summon some mobs to his aid and also do this like dumb teleporting hit thing. It's really annoying. He can also catch you off guard because you can't just spam your rage since a lot of his movement is health based. Once the Keeper is defeated, Kratos will use his blades to pry open the creature's chest and pull out its heart. Taking a moment to collect himself, Kratos looks off into the clouds, a face amongst lightning appearing. A booming voice calls out to him, Kratos recognizing him, Zeus. Mimir questions Kratos stating that Zeus is his father. Mimir is shocked by this as Kratos asks him what is beyond the bridge, Mimir just stating that he must never go there. Kratos doesn't understand how Zeus can be there, Mimir telling him it is an illusion and that he should just focus on getting back to Atreus. Seeing the pathway blocked, Kratos goes to examine a column only for Brok to appear. Brok insists he gives him the Blades of Chaos, Kratos, though hesitant, complies. Mimir wonders if Brok has stolen them, the dwarf coming back and telling Kratos about their new enchantment. Kratos can now use the Winds of Helheim for a short time so as to open doors and solve other types of environmental puzzles. They now make their way back to Tyr's temple. Mimir keeps on about the illusion of Zeus, Kratos telling him to stop. Finally getting back to the center chamber and going back to Midgard, Mimir finally understands who Kratos is, the Ghost of Sparta. Kratos, obviously irritated, tells Mimir not to call him that. Mimir insisting he knew that the gods of Greece had it coming, and that Kratos seems to always be around gods whether he likes it or not. He goes on about Atreus, Kratos saying that he can never know, Mimir telling the father that in order for his son to grow and understand himself, he must understand who Kratos is. Kratos again tells Mimir not to say anything. Getting back to Brok, he says he finally made the realm travel better, this meaning the gate can now lead directly to Freya's. How convenient, Brok. Finally getting back to Freya, Kratos gives her the heart and she brews up a potion to help the boy. She remarks that in order to truly heal him, he will need to know the truth of who and what he is. Freya slowly tells Kratos of her own child and her fears. She said she'd do what she could to love and protect him, but he grew to resent her. She doesn't want the same for the two, telling Kratos to have faith in Atreus and to trust him. Atreus finally awakes, getting up and looking over to his father. Kratos wonders if he is good to travel, Freya nodding. Atreus promises he won't fall ill again. Freya and Kratos show each other respect with an embrace of arms, and the gang are now able to move on with their goals. Due to Brok's tinkering, the realm gate is broken, so the gang must take a boat. Atreus gets in as Kratos pulls it to the water. He seems dejected, Kratos knowing he had heard him and Freya talking. Atreus mentions the curse, Kratos finally feeling it is time, tells Atreus of his godhood. He states when coming to Midgard he wished to live as immortal, but that is not what seemed to have happened. He tells Atreus that he is also a god, Atreus just asking if he can turn into animals because of it. Kratos, not expecting Atreus' question, is unsure of how to answer. He asks if his mother was a god as well, Kratos saying no, but she knew who Kratos was. He wonders why Kratos took so long to tell him, his father saying that he wanted to spare him a life of potential pain. Atreus rattles on about different powers, Kratos not knowing what he is truly capable of. Atreus continues wondering what he can do, Mimir remarking that his vast knowledge of language in itself is a power. Finally descending into Tyr's vault, Atreus remarks that if he had known he was a god, he wouldn't have cared as much about the Elves of Elfheim, among other things. Yeah, Atreus ends up getting a literal god complex. He's gonna have, pardon my language, some shit takes for a while. The walls of the lift are lined with tapestries reflecting Tyr's travels throughout his time as a god, Mimir telling the two of his exploits. The inner workings of Tyr's vault is very much that of a giant set of puzzles and traps. There are a few tidbits of lore and conversation, but it's fairly counterproductive to the flow of the script to just try to list them all. But I will remark on one scene since it's important to Kratos as well as the whole connective tissue of the God of War universe. They get to a room lined with all manner of artifacts from realms outside of Midgard. Kratos notices a small urn of what appears to be wine. He takes in the brew for a moment, it reminding him of home. Isn't that place like on fire? Wouldn't all of Greece just be a wasteland? I don't know, it's not much of a home to go back to. Kratos then notices a piece next to him, a vase featuring a painting of a familiar figure. Kratos smashes the vase and hurries Atreus along, insisting they must continue through the vault. Getting to a room that depicts the Great Wolf's skull and Hati, the group are met with a deadly trap. Even though they manage to solve the puzzle with the wolves, this doesn't stop the room from trying to kill them. Out of options, Atreus starts the large mechanism with his mother's knife, destroying it. He is saddened by this, but understands he did it to save his father. Atreus then notices the protection rune on Kratos' neck got rubbed off by the plant-like roots that bound him to the trap. Finally able to get the rune, they go back to the center chamber, Kratos handing Atreus a knife. He said he made two the day Atreus was born, both consisting of metals from Greece and Midgard. Atreus takes it, saying he is now a man. No, son, you're not a man yet. Oh yeah, Kratos says it's because he's more than that, the whole god thing and such. Don't worry, Atreus, you too might be able to one day grow a beard as glorious as Kratos's, or Mimir's, or Sindri's, heck, even Brok's. Using his knife, Atreus breaks the seal and the black rune is attained. Kratos looks over at it, knowing that the stone is blank. Atreus catches it, the rune reacting with his body. The stone then crumbles away, Kratos asking if he saw the rune, Atreus remarking that he did. And once again, we are set upon by trolls, this time with fire and ice gimmicks! So I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't understand the whole rule to this fight. I've obviously fought them twice, but I still don't get how they're healing but also taking damage. I just found it easier to take the fire one out first, because by that point the Leviathan axe is stronger than the blades. Once that one is down, you can just take out the ice troll. With the rune obtained, they make their way back to the sand bowl and head up. The two sit down, taking a moment of rest after the ordeals of the vault. Kratos pulls out the small urn of wine. He tells Atreus it is from an island close to his place of birth and hands it to him, allowing him to take a sip. Atreus hesitates, remarking its smell and wondering if it's still good. Kratos eggs him on and the boy takes a swig of it, obviously not to his liking. Kratos takes the urn back and downs the contents, throwing the urn over his shoulder. He looks to Atreus and smiles, letting out an exclamation of content, Atreus mimicking him. Atreus asks Kratos why he came to Midgard and why he hates gods so much. He says that gods like Tyr and Kratos mean that there are ones that are good. Kratos merely agrees that he only kills ones that are deserving, Mimir remarking that it's not that simple to judge something. Atreus clapping back at him, saying he and Kratos are allowed to since they are good gods. Going back towards the mountain, Atreus wonders if Jotunheim even still has giants, and the two once again cross paths with Sindri. Sindri looking over some innocuous machinery. Atreus wonders if he can tell Sindri he is a god. Kratos stops him, Sindri overhearing this. He walks over to the gear that had rolled away and wonders if Atreus had put it in his mouth. He goes about gagging, Kratos telling him it is a family affair. Sindri picks up the gear and walks back over to his work table, remarking he knows a thing or two about family issues. Atreus, feeling the side effects of his complex and just being a mean, awful child, decides to belittle and insult Sindri about his feelings on Brok. Atreus walks away, Sindri just distraught by the child's cruel words. He notes the feeling of hurt, but is still willing to help the two upgrade their gear. Atreus, you broke the one rule. You don't upset the dwarf. A storm brewing above, the group continues on. Kratos will ask Atreus why he spoke to Sindri in such a manner, Atreus asking if he was tired of hearing about the two. Atreus said he needed to hear the truth, Kratos noting what he said was unkind, that his mother would have disagreed with his actions. Atreus just coldly replying that she wasn't a god. Most of the dialogue that the group go through while climbing back up the mountain is mainly Kratos and Mimir trying to tackle the strange mindset that Atreus is now in. I'll cover a few key points, but again, like many other sections, things must be omitted for the sake of the script. Making it past the stone steps, once covered in black breath, Atreus will remark how he and Kratos, along with Tyr and Freya, are good gods. Odin and the other Aesir are evil, and Odin should feel threatened by them. Mimir says not all Aesir fit into this narrow view, but Atreus insists, mentioning Magni, who his father killed. Entering the shrine they had passed through previously, they walk to the center chamber, and there stands Modi. He's bloodied and broken, muttering about his father, Thor, having thrashed him for his failure. Atreus, having no fear for the Aesir, goes up to him, saying if he doesn't get out of their way, he'll finish what Thor started. Modi tries to protest but falls to the ground. Atreus looks to Kratos, knowing the implication on his son's face. He tells him no, and that due to his condition, he isn't worth killing. Atreus insists they should, due to the horrid things Modi said about his mother, also stating his godhood as a reason for doing as he pleases. Modi laughs at the boy, making yet another lewd comment about Faye. Atreus stabs him in the neck, then kicks him into the ravine. Kratos reprimands the boy for his rash actions, Atreus only saying he's been taught to kill, Kratos correcting him and saying that he's been teaching him how to survive. He goes on to tell Atreus that due to his godhood, what he does has consequences, Atreus barking back, wanting to know why. Kratos, still hiding his secrets from his son, merely tells him to watch his words. Atreus shrugs off his father, then walks away. The group will bicker as they go further up, Atreus asking about the blades, Kratos refusing to answer. He will insist Mimir that he has nothing left to learn, Mimir less than thrilled by the assumption. They will happen upon Sindri once more before exiting to the top of the mountain, but this isn't a character encounter, it's just a shop. Sindri won't have much to directly say, just his chiding remarks while looking over your gear. Getting out to the summit and climbing up to the garden that was once Mimir's prison, Atreus cuts his hand and draws the rune over the lock. Kratos can now use the chisel they obtained to open the gateway to Jotunheim. They step in front of the gate, remarking the view before them. Before entering, they're attacked, Baldur coming up from behind and smashing Kratos into the gate. Atreus tries to help, firing silver arrows into the Aesir, but they do little to him. He is elated by the fact that he didn't need Kratos but Atreus to get into Jotunheim. Kratos, picking up Baldur, slams him into the gate, breaking through it, the portal closing. Atreus, enraged by this, throws his ire towards Kratos, firing upon him, stunning him. Trying to take down Baldur himself, Atreus charges with his knife, only for Baldur to easily subdue him and capture the child. Baldur bids Kratos farewell and leaps off the mountain with Atreus. Kratos follows after, landing onto the back of a massive dragon. He and Baldur once again duke it out. Baldur manages to eject him from his ride, and Kratos lands on the temple bridge. He quickly hurries into the temple, Brok shouting at him, asking who activated it. Kratos manages to get inside the central room, Baldur there implying he's opening the gate to Asgard. Kratos, in an effort to stop him, fights against Baldur and slams the Bifrost and controls the gate to Helheim opening. They're sent hurtling into hell, Baldur trying desperately to hold onto Atreus, Kratos fighting him off. Finally crash landing, Kratos collects himself and Atreus. Kratos finally gives him the, "You need to curb this attitude and cut this crap, cause I'm getting sick and tired of it, boy!" Atreus sulks, realizing how much of, well, a jerk he had become. Atreus remarks where they are, Mimir pointing out that they're exactly where they don't want to be, the other side of the bridge. They see an old ship in the distance, Mimir telling them to get to it. Crossing through a gate, they see a figment of the scene before, Atreus attacking Modi. Atreus, though concerned by the ghost, is told by Kratos not to linger on them. Kratos will ask Mimir what the figment was, stating it's an illusion of hell that are meant to torment those who wander it. Atreus assures it wasn't him, but Kratos reminds him of his current attitude. Getting closer to their goal, they hear voices in the distance. It's Baldur. Climbing around the rocky platform he stands upon, we see him snapping at a vision of himself and of his mother, Freya. He curses at her for the gift of undying, Freya pleading that she only did what she felt was right. Baldur eggs on his illusion, wanting it to kill the one of his mother. He curses and yells at his past actions, Kratos and Atreus managing to slip by. Kratos asks why Mimir didn't tell them, Mimir simply saying he forgot. Finally getting closer to the boat, a voice rings out familiar only to Kratos, Kratos telling Atreus to ignore it. So the boat is a gauntlet, there's some dialogue and such, but yeah. They fight a bunch of enemies, the boat stalls, then Kratos uses the flames in the boat to make it fly. This part is dull. I get why it's here, pacing and such, but oh man, I don't want to talk about it any more than I need to. Before getting to the temple, the illusion of Zeus and Kratos appear, Kratos paralyzed by the vision before him. They depict a moment when Kratos attacks Zeus. Atreus runs through them, grabbing his father's hands. Kratos, confused, hesitates, but Atreus urges him he needs to move. They wonder how they're going to get down from the destroyed boat. Atreus adopts his father's tried and true method of jumping, the gang crashing through the roof of Tyr's temple. Upon going through a sealed door, Mimir remarks that the city looks to be Odin's. Inside, they see a missing triptych piece from Tyr's vault. Mimir asks to see it, and upon doing so, realizes he doesn't know what it means. He parses that the figure is Tyr and that the symbol in the corners represent different lands. Kratos recognizes the one in the top right. Each symbol seems to be the imagery of war. Kratos notes his eyes, Mimir taking a closer look. The bifrost from his eye shines onto the mirror, revealing more. It notes a key that helps Tyr travel realms, and another object of sorts that can help them get to Jotunheim. Kratos asks how they would make the key. Mimir, giving an obvious answer, says to ask a dwarf. Getting back to the main chamber of the temple, Kratos will bring up the illusions of himself and Zeus, Atreus lying, saying he didn't see anything. As they wait to enter Midgard, Kratos asks again about Baldur and Freya, again Mimir giving odd answers. They ask about the pair, about Baldur's weakness, again Mimir trips over his own thoughts. Kratos figures he is bewitched, which makes sense considering Freya did reanimate him. Entering Brok's shop, Kratos asks if he can make the key they need. Brok states that's not his style of craftsmanship, that he only creates weapons and the like. Sindri appears giving advice to his brother. Brok nearly wonders where they would find the material to make it, scap slag. Sindri, smug, pulls out a large glowing lump of ore from his bag. Sindri gags, noting he had to get his hands dirty in order to obtain it. Brok, elated, says he'll make it, Sindri curious by the sudden change. Brok notes that he can grow too, the brothers going to work, forging the key that will aid Kratos and Atreus. Finishing it off, Sindri goes to hand the key to Atreus, but Brok notes that it needs a brand. Sindri pulls out his and Brok adds it to the key. It now shows the reforged Holger Brothers brand. Atreus smiles, Brok shrugging him off. Sindri, pleased, says he prefers things this way. Kratos, having no time for this, grabs the key. Brok will offer his hand to his brother, Sindri trying but refusing to shake it. And yes, Atreus will apologize to Sindri for being a massive Egypt, and Sindri will accept it, because he's cool like that. I squeed when Sindri walked up. Seeing these two back together is like the best medicine. It makes my heart so happy. Look at them, being brothers, working together. I love them so much. And finally now, once again, go back into the bowels of the temple and deal with all this wacky Tyr stuff. It turns out the bottom of the temple's center chamber mirrors its top. Getting to the Jotunheim door, they notice a seal similar to the one in Tyr's vault. After inspecting it, two entrances on the side will open and they make their way back out to the exterior chambers. They find themselves on the other side of the Jotunheim door, Kratos noticing something about the center chamber. He goes to the edge of the chamber and lifts it, two massive chains on either side stopping him. Mimir is curious about the design, Kratos just bluntly saying that the temple can be flipped. Mimir, confused, tries to see Kratos' logic. And Kratos is just like, I'm Kratos, I see I can flip, I will flip. There's a sandbowl platform that lowers them down to the levels the chains are on, and each side is just a series of traps and monster rushes. Once they get to the trains, Kratos will break them, and then they'll go back to the center room. And Kratos just flips the temple. I'm old. I've played a lot of games in my time, but I'd be lying if I said this wasn't one of the coolest scenes I've seen in any game. I can definitely get behind Kratos' ridiculous logic. Mimir remarks on his strength, stating to be happy to be on Kratos' side. As they get back to the center chamber, Atreus will state how he's happy they were able to do this. With the help of everyone, yes, even the dwarves. Mimir is happy about this, glad to see Atreus back to his empathetic, caring self. Breaking the seal, they come across a stone, Mimir saying it's something called a Unity Stone, a key which has allowed Tyr to travel to all manner of realms, not just the 9 many were limited to. Mimir figures out that they must go to the realm between realms, heading back to Brok's shot to access the portal to do so. Can I please state one of my other gripes about this game? Why don't Brok and Sindri comment on the temple being flipped? Like, they would've noticed. The archway to the temple is open. I wanted so badly for Sindri to be freaking out about it, but excited while Brok is just trying to get him to shut up. That would have been so funny. The gang enter the realm between, Mimir very unsure about this, Kratos telling him to have faith. Looking down into the fog of nothingness, a strange monolith can be seen. Atreus climbs onto his father's back and they leap off, falling into the mist. They cut through the void and land on more disembodied roots of Yggdrasil, in the distance the realm tower of Jotunheim. It was mentioned many times before that the Jotunheim tower had disappeared from Midgard. Mimir, putting the clues together, found out this was Tyr's doing, finding the tower in the realms between, all but confirming this. Entering the tower, they place the stone inside, and oh man, we get another gauntlet. Again, pacing. The tower is essentially shuffling through all the realms we've previously visited. So they fight a, well, sample platter of what we've encountered before. Finishing off the onslaught, the gate activates and they are now back in Midgard, the bridge cycling over to them. Again, Brok and Sindri have nothing to say about this. We literally just went to the realm betweens, found the Jotunheim tower, and brought it back. What does it take to impress these dwarves? The boys finally feeling they're at the end of their goal, they go back into the main chamber and activate the portal. Only for Mimir to tell them it won't work because the Traddle Stone that channels the Bifrost is missing. He says he could be used for it, but he's missing his other eye. Odin having taken it a long time ago. Atreus, though disheartened, wonders if Mimir knows where it is. He's unsure of its location, but assures them that due to seeing Sindri and Brok show up at his old prison from time to time, that perhaps Odin had spoken to them about it. Atreus will ask the boys if they know anything, Sindri deciding to be the most insufferable he's ever been. Sindri, please, I know it's gross, but you gotta gain some courage. To translate the awful noises, Sindri says he was asked but refused, Brok essentially saying the same thing. But he knows that such a thing was built, that being in the statue of Thor that Jormungandr had destroyed earlier. Atreus wonders how they're going to get inside the World Serpent to get the chamber, Sindri once again being insufferable. They get over to the horn that summons the serpent, and Mimir tells Jormungandr what they need to do. Jormungandr agrees to let them, lowering his head into the water. Though the gang is not thrilled by this, they carry on. The giant's mouth closing, the gang now makes their way through the putrid and dark cavern of Jormungandr's gullet. Finding the hammer, they get up to the secret chamber, Atreus wondering if it's really there, Mimir saying he doesn't know because he can't see through it. They open the chest that had fallen out of the hammer, inside Mimir's other Bifrost eye. Kratos pops it back into Mimir's head, Mimir happy to finally have his depth perception back. As they try to exit Jormungandr, the belly of the serpent is disturbed, Mimir thinking it's them, Kratos knowing it's something much worse. The serpent rumbles even more, the gang being thrown from its mouth and landing on the snowy embankment near Thamor's body. Atreus, much like his old man, is now getting used to being thrown about and making some sudden landings. They see a distressed Jormungandr lying on the mountain in the distance, the group unsure as to what happened. Above them a hawk flies over, it swoops down to them and changes the creature revealed to be Freya. With the knowledge of knowing she is the mother of Baldur, they are unsure if she can be trusted. She wonders what happened to Jormungandr, then says she's looking for her son. Kratos wonders if she knows his location, she tells him no, but the realm speaks his name, this meaning he's in Midgard. Freya, confused by the temperament of Kratos and Atreus, wonders why they are so distant. Before they can converse, Baldur appears walking out of the frigid water. Can I talk for a second how much I kind of love Baldur? People think he's a bit but the whole idea of his character being so unfeeling and apathetic makes him quite entertaining. This entrance, despite it not being super fashy or glamorous, really shows how little he cares about himself or anything else. Baldur revels in the fact he beat up Jormungandr to get the serpent to spit them out. Walking up to confront Kratos, he soon realizes Freya is there, the two taking in a moment. She asks him not to run away, Baldur assuring her he won't. She tries to plead and empathize with him, but Baldur will hear none of it. He laments the past 100 years of his life, wanting to express how angry he was with her. Baldur gets close to Freya, Kratos stepping in. He tells Baldur to stop seeking revenge against his mother, that it will only lead to more destruction. Baldur shrugs him off and promises to deal with Kratos later. Going after Freya again, Kratos shows Baldur and the first part of the Baldur fights begin. The first part is just basic. Get his health down and it will get to the next scripted section. During this bit though, Freya will protest to the two, asking them to stop, and will eventually encase Kratos in vines. She will try to do the same to Baldur, but he manages to dodge out of the way. Atreus, after freeing his father, gets between Kratos and Baldur. Baldur lays into Atreus, throwing him back, his body stained with blood. Kratos holds him as he gasps for air. As Atreus regains his breath, he tells his father that the blood isn't his. They look over to Baldur, the mistletoe arrow pierced through his knuckle. Within Norse mythology, mistletoe is the only thing in all the realms that Freya could not convince to not harm Baldur. So due to Atreus having it on his strap to keep his quiver from slipping, Baldur is now vulnerable again. "Hey Sindri, you inadvertently killed a god! Good job, buddy!" Baldur basks in the feeling of everything, the pain in his hand, the wind, the frigid cold. Freya cries out as Baldur readies to use his newfound excitement to keep fighting Kratos. And Freya once again intervenes and summons the corpse of Thamor to move them? Yeah, this is a bit wacky, but holy crap, she's got some powerful magic. That bro is huge! Atreus asks what she's doing, Kratos assuring him that Freya is not trying to kill them. They wonder about the mistletoe, Mimir only now remembering the weakness. Kratos asks if he can now be killed, Mimir confirming his speculation. Freya drops them off and tells them to stop fighting Baldur, that she will reason with him. Kratos insists he's going to kill her, Baldur confirming this. He once again gets to Kratos, the fight continuing. Kratos will get a few hits off on him, then plant Leviathan into his shoulder. Baldur, elated by the pain, takes the magic on Leviathan and encases himself in ice. Only the blades will work on this sort of him, and Freya will also have traps lying about to trip you up, but again, like most of the Baldur fights, just try to dodge and parry his attacks. Shield bashing works well too. Once he's down to a certain amount of health again, it will go to another sequence. Kratos will stab him with the blade, sending him into a stone wall. Freya will get in between them with Thamor's hand, Kratos going over to it and lifting it up. As Baldur runs forward, Atreus shoots the crystal and it explodes, sending Kratos off the side and down the arena they had previously fought Magni and Modi in. Baldur is now on fire, having absorbed the fires from the Blades of Chaos. Freya will summon some mobs to try and stop Kratos. Again, this time you have Leviathan, same idea, just destroy the mobs, then focus on Baldur. Freya will use the true chisel of Thamor and try and break up the fight, Baldur roaring to her and climbing up it. Kratos will follow after, Atreus jumping over to him. Freya lifts up the chisel, the two holding on for dear life. As it levels out, they see Baldur, Atreus leaping off Kratos and firing at him. Baldur races down to them and begins to attack Kratos. The two will lay into the Aesir, Freya trying to shake them off the chisel. Atreus will tumble back, Kratos grabbing him by the leg. Despite Atreus' predicament, he will still attack Baldur, firing upon him. Baldur and Kratos will continue their bout, falling off the chisel. Atreus, taking a dive after them, will unleash a hail of arrows as they crash onto the other hand of the giant. Let me repeat that. Atreus leaps off just to go to town on Baldur, while Kratos is holding him back. Like, dude, where did this kid suddenly get all of this swagger? Oh right, yeah, his dad is Kratos. Baldur manages to pin both of them and proceeds to thank him for lifting the spell. Before he can kill the pair, Kratos goes into his rage and the final bout begins. Baldur will now switch between the ice and fire forms, and I also think he's faster. It's hard to tell since you're just sort of again beating the holy heck out of him until he goes down. Atreus and Kratos will beat into the Aesir in tandem, Kratos finally going in for the heavy blow. Freya will try to blow them away with a massive blizzard of breath from the giant, Kratos grabbing Atreus and shielding him. Atreus will summon Jormungandr, the massive snake launching into the giant corpse. They will all come crashing down, including Freya. Kratos will begin to choke Baldur, the god egging him on. Freya pleads with him, Atreus echoing the words of his father when they confronted Modi. Kratos tells Baldur to leave, to never come for them again, and to leave Freya alone. Freya protests that she doesn't need Kratos' protection. Kratos lets go of him and stands, Baldur getting up and addressing his mother. He tells her to stop interfering, Freya insisting she's only trying to do what's right by him. She wishes for him to forgive her so they may start anew, Baldur wanting nothing more than to kill her. Freya, in an effort to connect with her son once more, opens her arms to him, willing to give him what he wants. Baldur hesitates, but through his sputtering cries, he grabs Freya by the neck and begins to choke her. She dearly resists, gasping through his assault that she loves him. Kratos grabs Baldur, taking him by the head. Baldur doesn't understand why Kratos is interfering, Kratos telling him that the cycle of destruction will stop here. In one swift motion, he snaps his neck, the Aesir falling to the ground, the life draining from his eyes. Freya rushes over to Baldur, crying over his lifeless body. Kratos tries to confront her, but his words mean nothing. She begins to rage, raining down a thunderous list of transgressions she will enact upon the duo due to the death of her son. Atreus protests, saying they saved her. She barks back, saying they robbed her of all she had. She looks to Kratos, calling him an animal, saying he will only ever pass on his rage and cruelty, ceasing to never change. Kratos rebuttals that she knows nothing about him, this needing nothing to her, Freya throwing it back in his face. She says she knows enough, but wonders if his son does. Kratos, as if to challenge her, addresses Atreus. He begins to tell the boy of his past. He tells him that his homeland is Sparta, and of his dealings with Ares. He states that he killed many and that he even killed his own father. Atreus mentions the vision in hell, and wonders if that's what it is like to truly be a god, to kill one's own kin. Kratos kneels down, taking his son's head in his hands. He reassures the boy that that is not the path they must take, that they choose who and what kind of gods they will be. Kratos assures Atreus he will not walk the same path as his father, that they will be better. Freya, holding the body of her son, walks past them, taking in a moment to look to them. Without a word, she leaves. Mimir adds that to Freya they are now the villains, but Kratos laments that she was not the one to make that choice. He turns back to Atreus and says they must continue their journey while he still has the strength. Atreus, not understanding Freya's reaction, wonders why she has become evil. Mimir says that she isn't. The death of her son has caused her grief to consume her, Kratos adding that she would have willingly let Baldur kill her. Atreus, confused, wonders if Kratos would let him do the same. Kratos says he would, stating that it's something only a parent can understand. Mimir assures the boy that getting Freya time will perhaps heal her to where she will one day reconcile with them. On the travel back to the temple, Atreus will ask Mimir about Baldur and why Odin set him to find them. Mimir stating he most likely lied and told him the secret to his immortality would be in Jotunheim. He will also ask about the mistletoe, Mimir not really understanding it either. Though saying such magic is very tricky to comprehend unless you are a witch of sorts. He notes how tragic the whole ordeal was, Baldur being the only thing Freya truly treasured from her marriage to Odin. He understands her reasoning to protect, but notes how foolish some parents can be when trying to overprotect their children. Going back to the temple for a third time, after killing Baldur, the dwarves do not care. They are now finally able to make their way to Jotunheim, Kratos directing the realm travel, Atreus taking Mimir's head. Atreus notes what they're about to do won't hurt, Mimir, worrying, begins to reconsider. The boy says he'll be fine, holding his head into the light. Mimir's eyes absorb as he cries out, Atreus then aiming him towards the door. The light fades and the door opens, revealing a large set of stone steps and a sepia landscape. Before they take the last leg of their journey, Mimir offers to stay behind, noting this should just be between Kratos and Atreus. Brok interrupts the moment with a rather crude statement, he and Sindri standing behind them. Brok looks proud of the accomplishment. Sindri has a look of reflection, or sadness, or both. He whispers an apology, nearly saying they just wanted to see Jotunheim before turning and covering his face. Mimir, not wanting to be left with the dwarves, begins to protest, but accepts his fate. Kratos throws Mimir to them, Sindri catching it. He tries to convince himself to carry Mimir, but chokes, throwing him off to Brok. Kratos and Atreus begin to make their journey onward, the faint voice of Brok scheming, while Mimir urges the two to hurry back. Crossing the threshold of light, they find themselves at the top of the Giant's Fingers, the highest peak in all the 9 realms. Kratos looks out over the land and renews his gauntlets. He then begins to unwrap the bandages around his arms, Atreus wondering what Kratos is doing. Kratos simply stating he has nothing left to hide. As the bandages fly away, the scars from his chains are revealed. While Kratos is having a moment, Atreus rudely interrupts, "Boy, your dad's been through a lot. I know today's stressful, but please, just wait like 2 seconds. Kratos will stop him for a moment and take Faye's ashes, holding the pouch to Atreus. He allows him to carry her for the rest of the way. As they enter a large cavern, Atreus is confused by the lack of voices. He figures he would hear Jotun. The large cave is lined with statues and murals, Kratos asking Atreus what they are. Atreus is unsure. He notices he can feel nothing, and appearing that the whole realm seems to be dead. Going to a crack in the wall, Kratos begins to make his way through. Atreus touches the wall and it glows, crumbling away, revealing imagery similar to the triptychs they had found in the other realms. The first shows Faye, Leviathan in hand. She stands before a council of giants. The second, the two meeting the World Serpent for the first time. The wall keeps going, showing their fight with Baldur and imagery of Thamor. He notes how it's their story, Kratos correcting Atreus and saying that it is his. Atreus wonders the meaning of the cardings, Kratos simply saying that Faye had secrets as well. The pieces finally falling into place, the two realizing that she was a giant all along, Atreus now understanding that he is one as well. They feel that this was her intention all along, that by having them bring her ashes to this peak, they would learn her secrets, and in turn, Atreus would learn about himself. Knowing now his mother's plan, Atreus says he trusts her and wants to continue forward. As he runs off, Kratos looks at the last carving covered by a cloth. It shows the imagery of his death, Atreus holding his body. He takes it in for a moment, then returns to his son's side. Going out through the crumbled opening in the wall, it's revealed that the markers Kratos and Atreus had used throughout their journey were left by Faye, to aid them down the right path. Finally getting to a ledge, they see what appears to be a massive range of mountains littered with the corpses of giants long since passed, a limp, outstretched hand in the distance. Atreus holds up the pouch of his mother's remains, allowing Kratos to do the honor. Kratos tells him that they will do it together. They spend a moment throwing them into the wind, the ashes of the late mother and wife once again with her people. Atreus laments over the scene before him, believing that all the giants are now gone and that he is the last. Kratos tells Atreus to follow him, the two now walking back to the cavern. Atreus notes his lineage, that he is part giant and part god, Kratos adding that due to his Jotun blood, he is also part mortal as well. Atreus, not understanding, wonders why on the wall the name given to him was Loki. Kratos mentions that that's the name Faye wanted for him when he was born, wondering if that's what she called Atreus when talking to her people. Atreus wonders why, Kratos wanting to leave it for another day. As they head back down the mountain, Atreus will ask questions about his mother, Kratos not having any answers. Atreus will ask about his namesake, Kratos telling him of Atreus of Sparta. He remarks that Atreus was not a god and a great warrior, that despite the grim life Spartans lived, Atreus would always greet the world with a smile. He showed kindness and joy despite what he'd been brought up in. Kratos remarked how he brought the good out in people, and when the day came, he sacrificed himself to save countless lives. Kratos carried him home on his shield and gave him a warrior burial, Kratos often remembering him to help him through dark times. Atreus explains how his father finally told a good story, wishing Mimir had been there to hear it. Finally entering the main chamber, they find Mimir on the ground, the two wondering where the dwarves went. Mimir proceeds to protest his treatment with them, saying they took measurements, then began to fight about the weather. As they travel back to Midgard, Mimir notes that much time has passed, that the death of Baldur has caused an omen to consume the land, snow and ice starting to claim them. Kratos doesn't understand this endless season, Mimir telling him of Fimbulwinter and the impending Ragnarok. Kratos throws it to mere folklore, and they make their way to the dwarves. They too mentioning Fimbulwinter. Sindri Nerdist tells Brok to stop, Sindri insisting that it's just a cold setting in. Brok, using one of his colorful descriptors, is adamant it's Fimbulwinter. Before the gang head out, Sindri will tell them that due to the sudden change in weather, that they should be careful and try not to die, Brok seconding this opinion. If you manage to actually trigger it, the boys will remark on Atreus' newfound gianthood. Sindri will state how he felt about Faye and remarks that despite what she had originally set out to do after the forging of the axe, she instead chose to put her fate in the hands of Kratos and Atreus. Now that the journey is done, the two will get home and get some much needed rest. As the evening sets in, Kratos is awoken by a rumble. They rush to the door and open it, a hooded figure in the distance, lightning sparking from them. Kratos demands to know who they are, the reveal of a large hammer on the figure's side. It turns out this was all just a dream, Atreus wondering what it meant. Kratos, not knowing, tells the boy not to linger on it, and they still have things they can do. KT, you, forgot to talk about Mimir. No, I didn't. Well, yes, I technically did, but I didn't. You can see why I hesitated though. Mimir is by far the most expansive character in the series, and it's difficult to talk about who and what he is without getting into spoilers with this game and its sequel, Ragnarok. Now, believe me or not, but the first time I saw Mimir way back when this game came out, I knew exactly who and what he was. I may not have a good grasp on Norse mythology, but I know my Celtic fae folk when I see them. Mimir, played by Alistair Duncan, was the main advisor to the Allfather himself, Odin. He is touted as the ambassador to all realms and is also considered the smartest man alive. These titles are backed up by his knowledge on just about everything the group came across. After some bout between the two, Odin sealed Mimir to a tree where he tortured and tormented him daily. So like I stated before, Mimir is technically Fae, often pining for his homeland, stating he was once a member of a king's court, but eventually outstayed his welcome and traveled to the realm of Midgard. This also means that Mimir is not actually his real name. What that might be is not revealed in the 2018 lore. Mimir also lines up with the actual Mimir of Norse mythology, the two sharing the same fate, an Aesir of vast wisdom and knowledge that is beheaded during the Vanir-Aesir War and reanimated by Odin, Odin carrying him on his belt. This obviously be the reason why he ends up the way he does in the game, a head on Kratos' belt after being reanimated by Freya. Mimir is also technically not alive, stating to Kratos and Atreus that despite having thought and memory, he is still very much dead. This meaning that Kratos did technically kill him at the tree. Again, I could write a whole book on Mimir, and I might even do a video on him one day, but talking about him in just a short blurb during the story was not ideal for our mysterious Goodfellow. Okay, I think I can finally close the book on the story. This was long, but we've still got a little bit left to do. So I decided partway through making this script that I wasn't allowed to actually make this video unless I beat Sigrun. I also decided to do this on New Game Plus. Mind you, yes, easiest difficulty and all, but I did not realize the game was, well, harder on New Game Plus. Okay, that's not too bad. You did all the other stuff in the original post-game, right? Right? No, I decided not only to fight all the Valkyries on New Game Plus, I also did Muspelheim and Niflheim, as well as all, if not most, of the favors, again. So in my main playthrough, I did actually complete both of Sindri and Brok's favors, this allowing me to obtain their honors, respectively. I also found out that by doing them again in the New Game Plus, you obtain even stronger armor. What I didn't realize is you didn't actually have to complete them in the base game playthrough. So a lot of this I did twice for literally no reason. I had to do all their favors, the dragon ones, as well as a lot of just random crap to attain the scat slag so I could make the honor that actually helped me hold my own against the Valkyries. Not to mention doing several other side things to attain specific enchantments. And oh man was I upset when I found out the lighting of the braziers didn't actually give you Valkyrie Bane Plus. Though the XC was nice, I did actually need it. Okay, it sounds like I'm mad at the game, but I'm not. I'm mad at myself by making this arbitrary rule that could have literally destroyed this video. I wouldn't have actually done that, but you feel me. Oh, and if you're wondering, yes, the Faders do have some story-centric dialogue, many of them allowing Kratos to teach Atreus some form of life lesson. The only one that really plays into Kratos and Atreus' dynamic is Sindri's. This being the one about Fafnir's storeroom. Sindri will ask the duo to take a look around and hopefully locate a rare whetstone. The first section of the duo will have no luck and find out it's been stolen by Reavers. They are told by the spirit of the Reaver that his son killed him and had taken it. Kratos takes the knife used to kill him, then they return, handing it off to Sindri. Sindri eventually finding them another location to look for the whetstone. After being told of the second place to look, the two journey inside and find the son who had killed his father was taken out by the rest of his crew. The reason I bring this one up is Atreus will wonder why a son could so easily kill their father. This obviously had in character lore importance due to Atreus finding the idea of something so unfathomable. I really should have tried to do this favor post-game to see if perhaps knowing of Zeus as well as Freya and Balder changes the dialogue, but I sadly didn't have the time. The biggest reason being numbnuts here, me, decided to do all this stuff before the Balder fight in the New Game Plus. Don't ask me why. I don't understand why I chose to tackle Sigrun before him. It's very obviously meant to be done afterwards, but that's how she goes, I suppose. I feel I should put myself on blast for how I actually did all the Valkyrie fights, the trials as well as defeating Sigrun. Because it's hilarious and bad, and I'm telling y'all so y'all don't do it how I did. So upon making this decision, I looked into the best armor to fight the Valkyries. Mind you, by this point I had redone all the Dwarven favors because I wanted to rut Sindri's new game plus armor. I love it, but it's so gaudy. In order to get their respective armor sets, you have to do both Brok and Sindri's favor as well as the one in combination. They aren't tremendously long, but the last area, Conan's Guard, is mildly frustrating. There's a lot to find in this place and you will get distracted. Once realizing this armor wasn't good enough to clean Valkyrie fights, I learned that the Ivaldi armor obtained from Ivaldi's workshop in Niflheim were the best. So I proceeded to spend the next fine hours running in and out of that place, getting annoyed and guilt-tripped by Sindri, until I finally managed to get all the treasure and realm tears. KT, cringe, why did it take you 5 hours? Cause KT didn't know you could break down Haze Weave and all the other resources you got into Mist Echoes. And when I did know, I used too much of my Aesir Bane and was one short of maxing out my armor. So I had to run around that stupid labyrinth until I got some more. I ended up going with Vivaldi's Pauldrons of Deadly Mist, cause I mostly run defensive builds, and I also just liked that they looked neat. Hehe, shiny shoulders. Once I got my armor upgraded, I finally went to finish all the Muspelheim trials, then fight the Valkyries. The guide I used putting them in an order where I didn't get the armor first. Honestly, because of the Ivaldi armor and the enchantments I had, none of the Valkyries gave me much grief. I did have to use my Resurrection Stone, but honestly, using it sometimes was a good reset, so dying to the mid-fight really isn't all that bad. Once obtaining the Valkyrie armor, here I am thinking I'm good to go, and I'm not. I gotta upgrade this junk, and that sent me on even more random favors around the map. Not only was I desperately searching for scat slag, I was literally running out of XP and hack silver. These doors were bleeding me dry. This 2-dwarf 1-man economy is harsh. Bless the developers for realizing this might happen and let you convert unused XP into money. Bless you. I did try to actually go at Sigrun before leveling it up, but no, I needed to be on my A game. Everything needed to line up. Max Valkyrie armor, max axe, max blades. Enchantments, I barely know they're working, cause oh man, that's a lot to remember. I also refuse to renew the Heart of Svartalfheim, cause I gotta rep my boys in any way I can, but honestly, I feel like it helped. I also didn't get the better one until after the fight, cause I forgot where it was. I know I could've googled it, but it's fine. Finally getting everything to where I could, I gave Sindri a little kissy kiss on his forehead and finally went at her with all I had. This fight is nuts. You will die. It's okay. Just get back up and go at her again. Sigrun will essentially use all the signature moves of her sisters. You know what? Here's the whole fight. No commentary. If you want to judge, judge. It ain't clean, but I did it. It's also the PS4 captures because mine didn't have audio, so I'm sorry for it being in 30 FPS.
On my way! Be okay. Almost there.
I'm honestly glad I beat her when I did, because oh man, I was shaking, tired, my arms hurt, but like, I did it. And the biggest reason I wanted to defeat Sigrun is because she actually does have significance to Mimir. Once she is defeated, her and Mimir will talk about their tragedy at the hands of the Allfather Odin. Sigrun will reveal that she is not the true queen of the Valkyries, that title only ever truly belonged to Freya. When Odin took her wings and banished her, Sigrun took her place reluctantly, but it was not enough for Odin. In order to save the other Valkyries from Odin's corruption, she sealed them away, but at the cost of herself. This is actually the lore signifier for why legions of Draugr and Hellwalkers were able to roam the realms without resistance. It's also hinted that her and Mimir had a thing for one another. I mean, Mimir, I get it. I like big, strong, flying ladies too. So I suppose it might be good to now just talk about my overall thoughts. Let's just get on to the conclusion. I really like this game. Yes, the unfortunate backtracking to Tyr's Temple and so on for the main story beats is a tad repetitive, and the enemy variety is not what it is to be desired, but I really like this game. It's been a while since I talked about my overall opinions on the God of War franchise as a whole, so let's go back to that for a moment. I wasn't a fan of the game. I thought Kratos was cringy and toxic, and I never liked the overall feel and tone of the series. But here, in Midgard, I'm really vibing with it all. The world building, the lore, the whole ideology and character direction they chose to take our weathered warrior. Kratos is amazing, heck, I love all the characters in this game. Atreus, Freya, Mimir, our lovely brothers. Even Magni and Modi are good. Despite only spending a small amount of time with them, they're made to be so hateful right at the gate that you really want to just go classic series style and end them. But even then, the curveball of what happens between Atreus and Modi shows us that not even Kratos wants to be like that. And yes, I even love Baldur. Due to the sequel and the portrayal of other notable Aesir, Baldur has been kinda thrown to the wayside. I even forgot about him before playing this game, but he is wonderfully executed. From the get-go, we get what kind of monster he's going to be, and the game does such a great job of adding on to his already brash character. We learn the pain he has for himself and his mother. We also find out through Mimir that his potential hatred for Freya is due to the words of Odin poisoning his mind. In Freya, the one thing I've learned, especially from Ragnarok, is that I think Santa Monica has truly shown that they know how to write grief and pain in such an organic way. I adore Freya. Her maternal nature comes through instantly. The small forms of love she shows through Atreus almost breaking my heart at points. She's a great counter to Kratos' stern and reluctant parenting. And she's truly a great parallel, especially since we know she is now on the same path of revenge that Kratos himself once walked. And my possible favorite addition is that of Mimir. As someone who plays a lot of classic RPGs and Zelda games, I'm quite fond of passive companion characters that are either there for comic relief or to help you understand the world better. As I stated early on, this game does a good job of handling having two audience surrogates. Kratos knows more about combat and just the overall wisdom his age brings, whereas Atreus understands the language and the world of the Nine Realms more. But then we have Mimir. Despite being considered the smartest man alive, there are even things that puzzle him. It's nice to have a lot of answers and lore so readily available, but it was always great to see when Mimir didn't know something. It then meant us, as the player, got to figure it out, making stuff more rewarding. Oh yeah, and the dwarves! I covered the brothers pretty well in the character section because I love them with all my heart, and so I wanted to talk about the brothers' relation to Kratos and Atreus, because I think it's cute and once you notice it, it's really nice organic character writing. When first being introduced to each brother, Kratos is fairly indifferent to them, but Atreus, being fresh to the variety of the world, wants to interact with said brothers. He helps Brok with his beast of burden and insists on speaking to Sindri when they first see him. Brok, funnily enough, forms a sort of unspoken bond of understanding with Kratos, not questioning on his usage of the axe and often worrying for him. He's even willing to go into hell with Kratos in order to help Atreus. Kratos will also refuse Sindri's help unless he improves upon Brok's additions to Leviathan, not remove them. And the same can be said for Sindri when it comes to Atreus. Due to Sindri's fondness of Faye, he sees a lot of her in her young son. Sindri enjoys speaking to Atreus and explaining his ways of dwarven magic. He even takes time to lend his skills to giving him new abilities for his bow. Heck, Sindri is even willing to forgive the boy despite how cruel he was to him. This sort of shows his understanding that Atreus is still young, and again, his adoration for the boy's late mother. Brok and Sindri are the best, like hands down. I love them in the sequel, and I sure as heck love them here. I suppose I can sort of finally wrap this up. The one unfortunate thing I have to say is, I know the sequel. As of recording and releasing this video, I've probably already beaten it, so I can't speculate on its development or the future of these characters. All I can say is that if you liked this game, Ragnarok is definitely what a sequel should be. I cannot wait to explore that one in depth, as well as other aspects of the Norse era as a whole. So thank you all so much for sticking it out until the end. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. I know I had a lot of fun making it. And if you don't already know, I have an art shop full of all kinds of goodies as well as a Patreon. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.